Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Welcome to day 1 of patch 3.24 and the Necropolis expansion. Today, the league's been going for about 15 hours, and I wanted to quickly go through the things that players have discovered so far. We'll just start though quickly by saying the league launch was pretty smooth. On a scale from 1 to 10, where 10 is Cyberpunk 2077, this is probably about a 2. There were some genuine problems, mostly with the PlayStation realms. They were really crangled early on. And also the European servers, and particularly the London servers, have been under pretty bad strain. But other than those serious issues, the more serious of which has been fixed already, the league seems to have gone ahead pretty smoothly. Now, let's have a quick look at some of the miscellaneous things people have found over on Reddit. Now, there is a Scarab that will add a special beast called the Black Morrigan into your map. The Black Morrigan was introduced in patch 3.23 as a mini-boss. And the Black Morrigan is something that you can now capture as an Ironheart beast, but it will only ever appear if you use a specific Scarab that causes it to appear, and this Scarab is not common, as you'll see when we talk about Scarab drop rates in a sec. The Black Morrigan is used in place of a yellow beast in some existing crafts, and when that's done, it modifies the craft to do something else. For example, instead of imprinting a magic item, you now get the effect of a Hinakora's Lock on a magic item. This is potentially extremely good in conjunction with Corruption, specifically applying Vaal Orbs to 3 implicit synthesized jewels that you're intending to use in conjunction with the Adorned. That's a primary use case that I can think of, although I'm sure that people will come up with other ones. Secondly, there's modifying sockets and links on an item. The socket one feels like it's just a waste of the Black Morrigan. The linking one, however, is pretty strong. And then there's an uber version of splitting an item. Now, it's important to note that this can only be applied to an item that has 6 explicit mods already, and that means, sorry, no focused amulet splitting, no simplex amulet splitting, no helical ring splitting, no manifold ring splitting, because they have a maximum mod count of 3, 3, 5, and 5 respectively. There's also some uber versions of the aspect skills, which are just basically the same skill as the level 20 version, but with slightly higher numbers. If you're not interested in using the level 20 version on your build, you're not going to be interested in the level 31 either. But if you are using the level 21 already, then the level 31 is going to be an upgrade. Secondly, players on Reddit have been reporting some pretty interesting findings with the Lantern of Aramor. I'm just going to leave this one here. Strongest monster in pack gains 25% chance for any jewelry items that this monster drops to be converted into a Divine Orb. There's a number of other loot conversion mechanics as well. This one's pretty weak, but there's also some stronger ones, like each monster of this type has a 2% chance to drop a Divine Orb. Thirdly, there have been not 1, not 2, but 3 players who have turned in massive amounts of Veiled Scarabs in Standard. Now, some people are reading from this that this is definitely the relative drop rates of these Scarabs. That's not necessarily true. We already know from stack decks that sometimes grinding gear games do vary the loot tables between what would drop in normal gameplay and what you get when you use one of these RNG turn-ins. That said, it's also possible that these do represent the drop rates of these various Scarabs, and what we're looking at here is a bunch of common Scarabs, then uncommon Scarabs that are something like 5 times rarer, then rare Scarabs that are something like 10 times as rare as the uncommon Scarabs, and then mythic rarity Scarabs that are 5 to 10 times rarer again. There is one thing that really irks me here though, and that is that in the 3.23 era of the game, you could look at how ornate the graphics were on a Scarab, and you could immediately tell how rare it was. For example, the bestiary Scarabs are like they were in 3.23. You've got a common Scarab, a slightly less common Scarab, then you've got something in the uncommon tier and something in the rare tier, and the rare tier 1 has this ornate winged art, the uncommon tier 1 has this gilded Scarab art, and then you've got the 2 more mundane looking Scarabs at the start. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. For example, the Delirium Scarab that has the old winged Scarab art is probably in the uncommon tier, whereas the Breach Scarab that forces Chayula has the old polished Scarab art, but look at its rarity. This one here is absolutely in rare Scarab territory, but the graphics don't imply that at all, and I think that that's a real problem here. In terms of the overall drop rate of Scarabs, this has actually been datamined, and it's 16,000. For comparison, utility flasks as a class, so that's all utility flasks put together, have a combined drop weight of 10,000. So once you're in maps, you'll see more Scarabs dropping than you'll see of those flasks. And additionally, there's a number of nodes on the passive tree that will amp up the number of Scarabs that you get. So do keep that in mind, and here's 2 other players' turn-ins from their Veiled Scarab pools. The other major discovery has been a number of unique items that come from the Uber bosses. So these haven't been found in League yet. These have been found by players who are playing in Standard League. Now, it's important to note that once they've been found, they can be datamined. Until they've been found in-game, their stats are a secret, and there are some that have not yet been found. But we have the Devourer of Minds first. This item only drops from the Uber Duber Elder encounter. Now, It has a couple of stats that are valuable to a minion build. It's obviously a minion helmet. The first one to note is that it has +1 to the level of all minion skill gems. This is a lot worse than having +2, and anyone that's beating Uber Duber Elder is definitely able to afford a +2. Remember that this applies to all minion gems on your character, not just socketed ones. Next, we have the charges shenanigans that this plays. Essentially what it reads is your charges benefit your minions, ignoring normal minion charge limits. Now there was a period when this would have been completely and utterly broken, and that's back when charges had 375% the effect on minions that they do on players. Now they have the same effect on minions and players, but it's still pretty significant. Even without investing into increasing the maximum number of charges on your character, this is going to give you 12% increased elemental resistances and physical damage reduction on each minion, plus 12% cast speed, 12% attack speed, 12% more damage, and 150% increased critical strike chance. This is a pretty significant amount, and it only gets better if you can scale them further. However, in order to get this benefit, you need to be investing on your character in charges as well, and that can be a little bit difficult to do on a build that's based around minions. So there's a fairly difficult problem to solve if you want to use this item. The payoff is definitely there if you were to use this alongside, for instance, one of each grand spectrum for charges. I'm just not sure that the payoff is there compared to investing in a different helmet and then 3 different unique jewels. Next came a set of gloves that I very much misinterpreted what they did the first time I read them. So this is the Hand of Phrecia. This is a set of gloves that's designed to be used in conjunction with link mechanics. Now link skills, everything around them has been unpopular so far in PathOfExile, but there's some reason to think that these might be a little bit better, and that's why they're quite expensive in Trade League at the moment. So, non-curse auras from your skills only apply to you and link targets. This is a pretty serious drawback if you're playing in a party. However, it's a pretty much irrelevant drawback if you're playing by yourself, unless you have a massive swarm of minions. Secondly, while you have a linked target, you gain up to 40% increased effect of non-curse auras from your skills. This is a really big number, really big, and honestly, you can manage the whole linking requirement using some of the most durable of minions that are in the game, Animate Guardian or a couple of others. For that reason, I think the Hand of Phrecia is worth at least thinking about. I'm not sure this is going to fit into many builds, but it is something that is worthy of consideration, and it's not something that should just be written off immediately because of that link text. If you get 40% on this, that is a lot. Of course, the glove slot is incredibly competitive too, and it's blocking out the potential of using Eldritch Implicits in one of the best slots for them. High opportunity cost, but a high potential payoff if you're willing to interact with a clunky and awkward mechanic. Is it worth it? That's up to you to decide. The Tempest Rising does not fit any existing builds. It cries out for you to inflict shock and bleed simultaneously on the same enemy. In short, it cries out to be used alongside Starforge. If you're using this alongside Starforge and it was very well rolled, you might get 23% increased duration of your bleeds, 24% faster bleeds, and also at the same time, any enemy that you inflict a shock on is then going to count as moving for the purposes of the bleed. It is important to note that it is only the combination of elemental ailments and bleed that benefits from this, because causing enemies to move doesn't really do anything for ignite and for poison. It's only of value for bleed, and for that matter, only of value for bleed if you are not taking Crimson Dance. And Starforge probably makes the most sense here because Starforge allows you to both inflict shock and also be dealing all physical damage. Next we have the Perandus Pact. Now this item was teased previously, but all of the modifiers have been revealed. So passives in radius can grant +2 to all attributes, +7% to armor, +6% chaos damage, 4% chaos rares, 6% cold damage, 5% global crit chance, 3% ES, 7% global evasion, 6% fire damage, 5 flat life, 5 flat mana, 6% increased lightning damage, and 6% increased physical damage. So it's going to roll one of those, and this comes from the Necropolis mechanics. Did I mention that I saved the best unique for last? Circle of Ambition is an Uber Cortex drop, and this is really interesting. This is essentially a unification of the various circle rings that come from the synthesis content, and it's better than any of them. Circle of Ambition is a prismatic ring, and it has 1 to 3 random synthesis implicits. I've only ever seen it with 3, but I'm not ruling out the possibility that it can roll with less. It's got a few really boring stats, but then it has 10% mana reservation efficiency of your Herald skills, and then 3 random modifiers that could appear on any of the other circle rings. For instance, if you get really unlucky, you might get +1% to maximum lightning resistance while affected by Herald of Thunder, 1% to maximum fire resist while affected by Herald of Ash, and Herald of Ice has 30 to 40% increased MRE. That'll be a very unlucky one, but more realistically, if you've got some combination of heralds that are typically used together, and you got some of the stronger mods for them, then this ring could be an absolute beast. And if you got it with +1 to a desired maximum charge, then you could be looking at something that is worth multiple mirrors. The next discovery relates to one of the uncommon Scarabs, Domination Scarab of Teachings. Now, this Scarab is miles better than a lot of people expected, according to a player who's been testing it over on their standard character. What they've been reporting is that if you have multiple shrine buffs active on your character, you'll get 30% increased experience per shrine buff, and this also counts minor shrines that you might get from the unique helmet the Gull, or from the unique chest piece Blunderbore. So that's an interesting little setup that you can use in order to turbocharge your XP. I should probably at this point mention that both of those uniques have increased effective shrines on you, and this also seems to increase the shrine XP bonus as well. Every single instance of said shrine XP bonus gets a buff from this. I've not personally verified this is what's being reported over on the PathOfExile subreddit. Finally, there's a small amount of information that's been data mined about the tier 17 maps. For example, if you're interested in the hit points of all of the bosses that are found in the Abominations map, then I'll put a link to that information down in the description below, as well as how much experience they give and a whole bunch of other stats. However, these stats can be a little bit unclear to parse. Anyways, that's all that's been found so far. I'm hoping to be able to get to play the game myself soon. I've been extremely busy over this weekend with visiting friends, and so I thought I'd prioritize making this video over getting through the first few acts, because that's all I'd have time to do tonight. But I will definitely be at it in earnest about 2¼ hours after the league starts. May your Orbs have interesting results.